the point where she was mute, and to the point where she's come out of that. And because of such an extreme change, she's sharing her story through this book, which I think can be relevant to all of us in leadership. Dr. Forrestal, Eileen, tell us a little bit about why you wrote this book. You're very accomplished as right now as a coach, mentor, speaker. You've started a publishing company. You went from one extreme to another, from not being able to speak to now speaking all over the world and helping so many people. Can you share with us, and I know this is very short, please tell us about this book and why you wrote it.
Yeah, thank you, Elsie. I suppose just to clarify, it wasn't that I was mute, but I was really selective about where I spoke. And I spoke very, very rarely.
Got it.
So anywhere that I thought there might be somebody listening, or that I had to, make a sort of a contribution, I would actually be really quite frightened and embarrassed that I would stammer. So I wouldn't do it. So I silenced myself. It wasn't that I was, I suppose you could say, wasn't quite a mute, but it was really like, I'm not going to speak here. 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 Because it was like almost the thought of speaking would have like my, talk about anxiety. I mean, my heart would feel like it's coming out through my chest, or my tongue would be stung to the roof of my mouth. And I'm not going to do it. So that was really how I lived most of my career. It was really from from kind of being a teenager, all the way really up until kind of, I suppose, really when I kind of had a breakthrough in around feel the fear and do it anyway.
What age did you say that you came out of it?
Well, I was probably in my early 40s.
Wow.
So, it was just a way of surviving, not having to just trying to hide this stammer that I had. Like I had a speech impediment that I had, that had been as a result of, an accidental overdose of aspirin. So, I obviously had a stomach washout. I have no memory for any of that.
At age 3.5.
I was 3.5. And it was like, it was obviously very traumatic at the time. I've no idea whether I had an anesthetic. I've no idea. But, knowing kind of my, it's like my terror really in terms of kind of feeling like I was caught somewhere or trapped somewhere, like trapped in the headlights. It was like I had to escape. So I had a whole way of having escape in life. And then if I couldn't escape physically, I would just not speak. And that had me escape kind of emotionally or mentally, or just really not be there, because if I wasn't speaking, well, I might as well not be there.
Yeah. I like the story when you said in your age 13, that's when you decided not to speak. That was the moment when that substitute teacher came across your desk and had each and every student come up, and it was your turn to stand up and say your name, and you just couldn't do it. And you were stammering, and then it became your power.
Yeah.
Then it became the devil or something. You said that.
Exactly.
Quote, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize I just sold my soul to the devil. Can you talk about that?
Well, it was like, it was so kind of empowering at the time to say, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to speak for you. I'm just not. Yep. So it's almost like you could do what you like to me. You can jail me. You can beat me up. I'm not speaking.
Yep. So
it became very empowering, but it was so short-lived. Like the relief was phenomenal. But then I had kind of sentenced myself to like just not doing it. It was like, it was almost too powerful. It was quite destructive.
Right. You said you sold yourself almost to the devil, like you were in a prison. And on page 50, you said, I was becoming someone I didn't recognize.
Yeah. Because it was like, now I had really stopped. I had really stopped making the effort. I had just kind of got so angry and so upset. I really turned it in on myself. And, when I say in the book is like, I actually had a sentence, my sentence that I came to really quickly was, you can shoot me, you can jail me, but you cannot make me speak.
Wow.
And I think it was like a sentence, somewhat like a sentence in a book, and then you kind of realize, in hindsight, like you're the perpetrator, the judge, the jury, and the jailer. It was because nobody else said to me, you're not allowed to speak. Nobody else said, stop talking.
Right.
Nobody else kind of put me in that silent place. I put that myself. But it was like, well, who was I? Where did I go?
Yeah. It's like you became someone you didn't even recognize inside, and you had two self-images, one on the outside and one on the inside. We kind of spoke a little bit about that before we got on this call. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that? And how did you, and also talk about how did you even get into medicine? Like, why would someone go into medicine who can't speak? Because there's many moments that we have to speak with patients, and or you might have to give a presentation. How did you
Yeah.
get away from that? I saw what you said in the book, but I'd like to hear from you.
Okay. Well, really, when it was coming to leaving school and thinking, what am I going to do? Everything looked like, I had tried working in an office. All I could see about offices was telephones. I just couldn't handle a telephone. And it looked like there were, customers, or there were people to deal with, or whatever, in what looked like work. So I thought, well, I'm good at studying. Could I just keep studying a bit longer? Can I stay in school a bit longer? Now knowing that I have a way of not actually speaking up. So university presented well, I could speak there. Maybe I'll hide there. So what's the longest course? So if I can hide in medicine for 7 years, I'll figure that out. I'll be able to calm myself down. I'll be able to relax. I'll be able to kind of get over this fear of embarrassment or fear of stammering. That was my plan.
Wow.
So in a way, it's sort of worked a little bit. I did calm down because I didn't have to do anything, but I also found myself refusing to do anything. So I wouldn't present cases. I wouldn't do whatever you wanted me to do. I just wouldn't do it. But I got all of the knowledge. I was listening, I was learning, I was reading, I was soaking it up. So I was actually really very good.
Right.
And then when it came to patients, I just thought listening was so important. So you were listening to people. And then I could see where people were suffering. And I thought, I can empathize with that. And then how can I deal with their suffering? So it wasn't, like I said, that I wasn't speaking to anybody. I was, but I wasn't speaking in any situation where that might be. We call it a leadership position. And really, as a doctor, you're technically a leader.
Yes.
So in this position, I was not taking any leadership role as a medic. I was just the complete student. And then I would be perhaps having these, conversations with patients, because it was one-on-one, and I could really, really, support what they were, what do they want? How could I help them? Because I was actually working as a locum, because I wasn't never applying for permanent jobs. I was a locum at one point, because I didn't know how long I'd be able to stay in a job before they kind of fired me or found me out because I wasn't, contributing. Orally, with presentations and that, which is obviously very important in medicine. And I just got an invitation from the anesthetist to say, would I like to try anesthesia? And I thought, well, I could try that. That seemed nice and quiet.
Nice and quiet.
And everybody, patients seemed to be asleep. And it was and technically, I was really, I was very good with, technical stuff. And I could reassure people quite easily. And then it was just a matter of being skilled with, I'm quite, manually dexterous, and I really like that. And I just like the intricacies of, and the immediacy of, anesthesia and intensive care. It was all kind of I just really enjoyed it. It was really, really great. So a lot of times my patients were asleep. They didn't really know I was there at all.
Right. So Eileen, tell me, how did you make that transition? How did you, and you said in your 40s, you worked your way up multiple jobs, it sounds like, through this book. And then you came to a realization that tell us about that moment when, or maybe the time period when you realized that something needed to change.
Well, how we're the last person in the room to see ourselves, So actually a trusted friend sort of invited me to look at some personal development work. And I thought, I don't do personal development. I'm a doctor. But anyway, I took that on. And during one of those sessions, it's my goodness, am I leading my own life here, or am I the victim of a decision I made when I was 13?
Yep.
And it's I can continue to be a victim of this decision that I made when I was 13, or I can take the reins.
Yes.
And I can say, wait a minute, what do I actually really want? Do I want to speak? Do I want to say something? And it's I'm not even sure what I even wanted to say, but I wanted to get myself out of this prison that I had put myself in, kind of unbeknownst to it, until, when you're listening and you think, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? I'm running away from everything. I'd run away from my marriage. I'd run away. I was just running away, as opposed to, Eileen, just go back to the drawing board. Who are you?
Right. I mean, I think he brought up a great point. And maybe physicians out there, healthcare workers out there who are listening, it's a matter of awareness of what's going on, being able to step back and looking in and say, you know what, am I being truly my authentic self, or am I living someone else's life? Am I really being who I was meant to be? And what is my purpose? And then go from there. Tell us from there what happened.
Well, it was interesting actually that it was interesting what showed up in my medical career because, because I was fundamentally quite angry because I wasn't, I was holding a lot in and I wouldn't say things. And in the holding it in, you build up a little bit of, anger or resentment or something. It's kind of undistinguished, but, it's kind of sits there in the background. And then I remember kind of after I had, it was like one of my conversations, I went to one of my consulting colleagues that we used to do orthopedic lists together. And the orthopedic lists were quite stressful, because I had a certain way about me, but I didn't quite know that it was impacting the team. I didn't really realize how it was impacting my performance, in terms of the way the dynamic worked in the theater with the team. So I actually went to my colleague and actually apologized for being kind of this silent, sullen,
wow,
and it opened up so much. It was like, oh my God. And I'm just saying, like, you're a super surgeon. I said, oh my goodness. I said, if I wanted anybody to operate on you, it would be you. I said, really, and I hadn't realized how much of that anger I was actually carrying around because I was resentful. That it was like, well, it wasn't me that was showing up somewhere. It was this like version of me, but there was a me inside that was trying to get out I was, since I put myself in there. So it just made a huge difference in kind of my work. And then I started to do more, courses, we'll say in medicine, leadership courses. And I was bringing back, I would go maybe to, Miami, go to Cleveland Clinic, I would go to Toronto, and I would bring stuff back then and I would present it to my hospital. And then we could make changes and things moved really progressively. And it was just really, really easy. And
did it happen overnight, Eileen? Did it happen overnight that you became this like person who's unstoppable, or that I'm looking at right now, who's speaking on social media, who's also on national TV, who's all over the place and has her own publishing company? Like, how did this trend? Was it gradual or was it overnight?
Well, like everything is gradual. Like everything is just 1 minute after the next. Like everything is like one day at a time, and it's like, I hadn't realized that when I was 13, the sentence was going to keep me there for, X number of years.
Right.
So when I kind of just altered the sentence, I said, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do something else. I'm just going to go out there and have a good time and just say what's on my mind and just speak up. And, people like it, they like it. And if they don't, well, that's, I don't intend to harm anybody, first do no harm, like we're medics at heart, right? And so it was just having that freedom to just, and I took courage to kind of say, well, maybe people are expecting me to say something, important. And I don't really have, it's not, it's just like, what's there, what's on my mind? What do I really, like, what do I want to contribute here? Like, what's going to help here, or what's going to make it easier or better for people, or, what could it be? So it's much easier just for me just to be that than to be not that.
Right. And I think your story is so inspiring to all of us. And I thank you for writing this book and speaking out and helping people. Now that you're a retired anesthesiologist, you've taken your career now to another level. You've written these beautiful diaries. I bought one of them. Let's talk about what's the purpose of this book. Who is the reader of this book that you put together? It's not just about your story. The whole other half of your book is about how do you do it? So what's your message and who is it for?
Well, look, the message is about courage, and you'll probably notice if you read it, there's a thread that runs through it, and the courage to say the things that need to be said when they need to be said. We like to put things off, and sometimes we just need to take the courage and say, I need to say it now. And a lot of it was around, I had a lot of anger with my mother. And it was kind of because she blamed herself. My mother blamed herself for leaving out the tablets that I took thinking they were Smarties. Right. So, I just held that kind of resentment. And it was like, what goodness, you let them hurt me and then you let them take out my tonsils. Yes. And I just developed this. So myself and my mother had kind of that fractious sort of relationship as well. And then it was like, wait a minute, when I kind of thought, wait a minute, Eileen, that's, it's like you have to look at life from the present, like really now. And I'm looking, my goodness, I had a great life. I had a great family. I had, I was, given opportunities. I had, I had great health. I had this wonderful education. I had been able to travel the world. I had this great life. And here was me kind of saying, oh, it's my fault that I, whatever, it's your fault that I, that I can't, that I'm sort of, just like not fully self-expressed and not fully alive in life. And I thought, wait a minute.
Yeah, you change the filter, you change the focus of your lens from why me and the victim to seeing what's really out there and what you're grateful for. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, my mom, it was like, so my mother was like, she was in her 70s when I kind of said, oh my God, Mom, I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Oh, you were able to say sorry to your mother.
I was able to say sorry. And I said, I didn't, and Mom said, sure, we never noticed. She's like, she never noticed. Like, your mother doesn't notice. They love you anyway, right?
She just said she didn't notice.
No, she just kind of, well, not that she didn't notice, but she just saw that I was unhappy. Yes. She was always wondering, why was I unhappy? And, and then, but I was so justified in what I was doing. And I was so just justified, that I didn't want to do all the stuff that I wasn't doing. Whereas the fact that I was afraid to do the stuff that I was not doing, I hadn't distinguished it as fear. And then suddenly it was courage. So courage is the simplest thing, and it's often for the simplest things. And we think they're these big things. We don't, not courage for big things. It's courage for small things.
Right.
And then,
yes.
And then, we think they're a lot bigger than they are, but they're small.
That's right. So how do you go through the fear? What's your message on, people do live with fear and then they live with unhappiness because they don't do what they really want to do. How do we get through that terror barrier?
Okay. Well, again, I've tried to explain it a little bit in the book because it really lived for me that I can't do it. I really lived like I can't do it. I can't, and just don't ask me. I can't. And I suppose in a way I was challenged to say, well, is that true? Is it that you can't? Or on some level, was it just, you just won't? Like I wasn't willing to try it. I wasn't willing to risk it. Right. So I just live like I can't and just don't ask me.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas when you can sit there and thinking, well, maybe I could. And then if I'm willing to say, well, maybe I could do the thing that, that I'm afraid of, I'm not going to, diminish people's fears or people's phobias or anything like that. But there's a question to say, well, am I willing to see, could I? That's right. Kind of the courage. It's the first question, and it's like my favorite quote, and it's in the book and it's really everywhere and any kind of a website or anything that I have is, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
That's right.
And it's like, you have to, in a way, think, well, you have to kind of say, well, is there a treasure that I want? That kind of takes courage to say that you maybe want something you don't actually have. Right. Because we like to justify that we don't have it and we don't want it in the first place and we're fine. Right. So, there's a willingness to say, well, actually, maybe I would like something. And is there somebody out there who can help me to get it? That's kind of, that's another sort of aspect of it, because there's always somebody there to encourage us and to help us. But we so refuse the encouragement, we refuse. I mean, we've been through many a clinic, I'm sure, Elsie, you and I, and we've given our best advice.
Yeah. And you know what, there's, when you look at successful people, you don't realize how much they've gone through. Everyone has gone through their ups and downs. Everyone has some kind of tragedy in their life and we don't talk about it. And people look at you and like, they think that you're just this brave person who's made it this far because you're lucky and you've got it all. And it's funny, I was on a video call just the other day and we're talking about personality traits and Enneagrams and these assessment tools. And I did this assessment tool. And one of the things that came up twice in my negative, the things that bring me down is bravery, the lack of bravery. And I said that to the group and they said, whoa, Elsie, I would never have thought you were lacking in bravery. Like there's a piece of me that's also very fragile that I don't show to everyone out there. And you're being so open about your life. I appreciate that. You're so vulnerable in this book and you're telling everyone how to do it. If I can do it from this person who just for 40 years of her life was not able to express herself in the way that she, you know, she didn't realize that she was a prisoner of her own life, or she started to realize it, but so unhappy. And now, like, wow, look at your life now. That is inspirational. I think everyone should read this book.
Yeah.
How do we find this book? How do we buy this book? Just tell
well,
everyone.
the book, it's on Amazon. You just have to Google The Courage to Shine, Eileen Forrestal, and it'll appear.
Okay. And tell us about your other books that you've written, some of the diaries, which I love.
The diaries. Well, yeah, the diaries are, you know, it's again something that somebody, you know, invited me to go into a partnership in a publishing company. And I thought, okay, it's like I could do that. Thinking, not having any kind of experience. I wasn't business. I'm in medicine for 30 odd years. But it just opened up a whole other world of discovery. Well, how do I do this? And I just loved the little diary that I used to buy myself. So when the writer of the diary, the author said, you know, did I want to join in as a, you know, as a co-creator or co-publisher? I said, okay. So then I just wanted to kind of, it was the words, like it's an inspirational diary. And I just get, you know, because I'm so into words, like everything is based in words, everything, the words that come out of our mouth, the words that doesn't come out of our mouth.
The words that, don't come out of our mouth. That's a really good point. The words that don't come out of our mouths.
The words
and
that
look
don't.
At you now. Yeah.
Yeah. The word to sit there back and forth between your ears saying, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything.
And yet you have so much to say and it's all coming out now.
That's the problem, actually. Like I could talk for Ireland now, actually.
I just and what does the diary inspire for people who use them? Because it's someone else's. It's a diary. It's an open book for people to write in their own diary. So what is the purpose of these diaries for people?
Well, if you notice, actually, there's very little space for people to write in their own. Okay. Because, you know, we live in our own world. I'm very clear what my thoughts are on about something. But when I go and read a book and listen to somebody else's thought, I think, oh, well, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought like that. So really what you're asking in the diary is to read it and read things from another perspective. Like there's a lot of quotes in there, like a lot of sayings. And it's like you have to sort of, you know, we do say it takes courage to speak. It also takes courage to listen.
Yes.
Because if you listen to somebody say something different, or you listen to somebody share about something and it doesn't fit your view, it's like, well, I'm not going to listen to that. Or you say, oh, well, if I could listen to that, that would give me access to other views. Like, gosh, and there's 7 billion of us on the planet. I promise you, we all think differently.
Yes.
It's like at some point you can find the people then that you can share their view and you think, gosh, you know, I like the way they say that. Yeah, I like that, you know, and then you can connect maybe with just kind of wider thinking than our own, because, you know, our own little ears, what goes on between the right and the left ear, you know, it's not a big space, but by golly, it can hold a lot of opinion that maybe, you know, we could shift a little bit to make life easier for ourselves and others.
I love that. What is your main, you said you were writing something on leadership just before we got on this call. What is your main message to, and I'm putting you on the spot maybe, but what's your main message on leadership to physicians and healthcare workers? I know we talked about burnout being very similar in our countries. So what would your main message be?
Well, what I was kind of, the way I was sort of writing, we always say physician heal thyself. We've heard that one a gazillion times, you know, and we're so busy out there kind of healing others and giving advice to others and looking at that. We don't actually sit and look at ourselves. So sometimes you've got to take up the mirror and we have to actually look and you say, where am I leading my life? What direction am I taking my life or the people who are following me? You know, like where are they? Am I leading them somewhere? And there was a nice quote I heard recently. I don't know where it came from. I said, but, you know, we're moving away from the sage on the stage and we're looking to the guide on the side, you know, and it's like, we can be our own guide, like at some point, but you're still aligning yourself with who inspires you. Who inspires you? Who do you, aspire to be like? What kind of leader inspires you? So I was looking at the different leaders. I like, Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and Mother Teresa. I'm into all of that kind of leadership. I'm not really into, people who are leading people to make like loads of money and all that sort of thing. It's just not kind of what lights me up. But it's that kind of level of inspirational leaders or visionary leaders, and it's like, where, what kind of world do we want, and who's leading us to the world that we want, as opposed to so it takes each of us to kind of lead ourselves towards the life that we want, and then maybe we'll have a world where we're all kind of living like that. So
that's
just
right.
to have it that
that's a great message. I mean, as physicians who've worked so hard to get to where we are, we often forget about ourselves, and we don't, and then we get on this routine and these habits that don't serve us anymore, and is not serving this changing world that we're in. So it's a matter of taking the time to think about where you're at. If you're unhappy, what's the root of it, and what can you do about it from where you are with what you have? I love that. And I want to leave with this last quote that from your book. And before we go, it says, we're the actor, we're the director, and the script writer of our lives. We're the singer and the songwriter. We choose the song. Can you talk a little bit about that as we end this podcast?
Yeah, well, it's like, who else is it? who else, like, we didn't come like pre-scripted. My mother didn't hand me a template and say, okay, Eileen, you're going to go off there, you're going to spend X number of years in school, you're going to spend X number of years in medical school, and you're going to do that and the other in your life. Like, so, each day I was obviously presented with something, and I made some choice, and then it was like, I got myself here. So when you write a book, it's very interesting how you join the dots backwards. We can actually join the dots forwards. We could.
Right.
So we don't have the, before you get the insight, you don't necessarily have the foresight. Now you've got the hindsight, but you have to use the hindsight for now to go forward, because everything is now. You can't go back and change the past, but you can actually go back and you can change the ending. I mean, how many scripts I'm sure are on the floor of Hollywood studios where they've changed the ending. Authors have written books and they've changed the ending. So, we can change the ending.
We can change the ending. We could change the dots that go forward.
We could change the dots. Yeah, we could change anything. Just change the dial. Figure
out your vision and make that dot different from where you are now. Don't be in the same dot, the same level of where you are in the same frequency. Find yourself somewhere else. That's great. And start today.
I think it's to kind of elevate a little bit like that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So how can people find you if they were interested in finding you, Eileen?
Oh, well, I have my website. It's called eileenforrestal.com.
Okay.
And they can connect with me through there. And I do, I actually coach, and I coach physicians, and I coach around well-being, because again, it's very distressing to me to see the level of burnout and the level of, where people feel they have to leave the profession because they're not finding their own voice within the profession. That's kind of what I would see is like, so there is a place for absolutely every voice, and really it just maybe takes courage, to speak up. And I think perhaps as well for physicians really to really be together. There's a lot of competition when you're in medical school. That's about the end of it. It then becomes really, really collaborative when we're working together. We're a unique group of people, who have experiences of just, it's extraordinary privilege to be a healthcare worker in this world, and to be able to support people through their darkest times, and just that we really, really, really need to be supporting each other. We really, really need to be, collegiate and all this camaraderie, and be supporting one another. There's no time for competition anymore in this world.
There's no time for silos anymore. And just not just for ourselves, but our patients, our communities, our country. So thank you so much for come all the way around the world to come on this podcast with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone who, I know you have some speakers for me. So I would love to hear from them. And if
Mhm.
you're out there and you have a story to tell that could help other physicians, please reach out to me at info@drlcco.com. I would love to hear from you. We also have our new leadership program restarting on January 10. So reach out to me and look it up at leadphysician.org. If you're interested in joining us, we're going to help you make a new beginning to your career and your life. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Sunday.